welcome back to ACB Wrestling Talk, your main source for wrestling news and wrestling discussions. I'm, of course, your host, Alexis Carrillo, and let's get into some wrestling talk. This past Monday night on Raw, just last night, Seth Rollins issued a very heartwarming apology that Kevin Owens called out as bullshit, as many fans did with him, because as we all know, Seth Rollins is currently, at least his character, he's currently in this small, slow burn into back to being heel. That's something that at least I'm interpreting from every single body movement, every single word out of the architect's mouth. I get the fact that, he's not a babyface anymore. He's not the babyface on Raw anymore. And we see that even with the reactions from the fans. Every time Seth Rollins comes out, you get that mixed reaction, that reaction that nobody wants. I don't think it's as strong as when Roman Reigns had that mixed reaction, but I still think that Seth Rollins is back on his way to being the heel that he used to be and getting that reaction. At the end of the day, his entire burn it down chant by the fans, that's still going to happen whether he's a face or a heel, because wrestling fans want to interact. Wrestling fans want to be a part of the show, and when you got Seth Rollins stomping on the mat as a heel or as a babyface, you want to chant burn it down, because that's what you do. You want to be a part of the show. But at the end of it, this is a slow burn, and as many times in the past have happened, fans are starting to get impatient. They're starting to not be completely in tune with what's going on with Seth Rollins. They want him to either be a face or a heel, and they want him like that. And, if you ask me, if you've been watching Wrestling Talk for a while, I'm a fan of characters, I'm a fan of storytelling over just one-on-one good sportsmanship wrestling. Don't get me wrong, I like sportsmanship wrestling every once in a while, but at the end of the day, I tune into Raw, SmackDown, Dynamite, Impact, Power, NXT, any of these shows. I tune into any of these shows because I am committed to the characters and to the storylines that they are telling us on TV. That's why. So I don't really have a problem with Seth Rollins having this slow burn towards returning back to being a heel. To which, Owens caught him out on his bullshit. AOP came out. AOP has no explanation as to why they attacked Owens and they didn't attack Seth Rollins last week. And then AOP challenged both Rollins and Owens to a match. Rollins agreed. Owens, he's a little bit more jaded. He's a little bit more doubtful and said, at the end of it all, it's all going to end with me getting beaten down. Rollins took off, again unscathed by the AOP, and then Kevin Owens called out anyone for a fight. And out came Lashley, and Owens and Lashley were seeming to get a little bit of steam behind them during this match when the AOP attacked Owens once again. And again, it was just a traditional beatdown, nothing more to it, just continuing the story. And then later in the show, we had Charlie Caruso ask Seth Rollins why he didn't help Kevin Owens against AOP, why he abandoned someone who he had just called family, like he just did with the entire roster. And again, we got more development from Rollins and his character, saying that, if he had helped Owens, fans would have still booed him. If he hadn't, they would have still booed him. He's damned if he does, he's damned if he doesn't. That's his entire perspective on the situation right now, and he just took off. So again, easing into that heel persona by Seth Rollins. And then Rusev came out to brawl with Lashley. Rusev, of course, had yet another restraining order on him by Lana, this time in the state of Tennessee, since Raw was taking place in Nashville. But apparently things gone awry, and Lana and Lashley ended up getting their hands on the police officers, and they were the ones arrested. Arrested. Just like Rusev last week, now this time Lana and Lashley got arrested. So 50-50 booking all the way. You know, it's not just only in the middle of that ring with the 1, 2, 3. It's also, you get arrested, I get arrested. Let's figure out what we do next week so that we can figure out what we do 2 weeks from now. That's WWE's way, apparently. And again, not interested at all in this storyline. Very hard to redeem any of these characters, any of these wrestlers. Lashley might be the strongest, meaning that he is with the ravishing Russian Lana, and the fact that he is going to remain a heel after all of this. But Lana is not going to stay a good wife after this, even if she reconciles with Rusev. And Rusev is going to just look like a big idiot after all that Lana did to him, just to go back to Lana after all of this. So again, we'll just have to wait and see what the WWE creative team comes up with to end this entire mess. We also got the Kabuki Warriors defeating Charlotte in a 2-on-1 handicap match, and Charlotte put up quite a fight against the WWE Women's Tag Team Champions. So again, don't understand this, because again, Charlotte Flair isn't supposed to be a babyface. She's a 10-time women's champion, which is quite an accomplishment, but amongst the IWC, that means she should be hated because they've been putting her over too much. So again, other than the fact that they put on a fairly entertaining match, mostly telling the story that Charlotte could handle both Asuka and Kairi Sane at the same time, it really didn't do much for me. And finally, on other events that happened on Raw, Drew McIntyre, very underrated performer, the guy who, if you ask me, should be in Brock Lesnar's spot. If you want a heel world champion on Raw, look no further than Drew McIntyre. He's pretty much the same, he's just younger, and he's full-time. Look into that, WWE. But Drew McIntyre came out, and he called RKO out, and he pretty much was unhappy about how Orton acted around the WWE, how he just acted like he owned the place. To which Randy Orton responded and said, well, I've been here for 17 years. I've kind of earned the fact that, you know, I can do whatever the hell I want. If I'm not mistaken, he's a 14, maybe 15-time world champion. There's a few world titles, give or take. You know, I don't think he's at the level of John Cena and Ric Flair at 16, but he's getting there. So it's safe to say that Randy Orton is a future first ballot Hall of Famer, like Drew McIntyre stated. And before anything could happen between Orton and McIntyre, and believe me, lots of fans wanted to see that, myself included, the OC came out. And we got a little bit of a continuation of that funny segment where AJ Styles just was at a loss of words. So Carl Anderson and Luke Gallows took over, and then ended up being OC attacking Orton. Drew McIntyre had taken off. We saw that before Survivor Series when NXT attacked Owens. Drew McIntyre took off once more. Safe to say, Drew McIntyre is not a team player. He looks out for himself. But the OC beats down Orton. Humberto Carrillo and Ricochet come out and make a save, set up the 6-man main event, and Rey Mysterio pretty much backstage thanks Randy Orton for what he did last week and asks if he needs any help. To which Orton, being the prideful viper that he is, says, nah, I'm cool. And then we go to the main event, where surprisingly we get the OC defeating Orton and Ricochet and Carrillo in the main event. Which, again, it's surprising because it's the heels, it's the heel stable getting the win, but not going to fly in WWE, at least not completely, because even with the win for the OC, Randy Orton came in for an RKO out of nowhere. How many times have we seen those? And that's how the show ended. The OC got the victory, but Randy Orton got the last laugh. Other than that, pretty uneventful Raw. no world champion. We're heading towards the end of the year. After TLC, it's going to be pretty much filler until January when we can start revving up the road to WrestleMania. So, have at it. Move on to our second segment. We got the AEW, who has quite news to talk about. We'll get to that. We'll get more to that a little bit later. But Chris Jericho mentioned, and he talked about how Roman Reigns would fare in All Elite Wrestling. He talked about how the big dog, the face of the company, the self-proclaimed, well, the hand-picked rather, face of WWE would fare in All Elite Wrestling. This when he talked to Conan on Conan's Keeping It 100 podcast. And this is what Roman Reigns had to say. If you have a guy like Roman Reigns in AEW, he'd be so over because Roman Reigns is a legit really cool dude. He's a great guy, super cool. He's the kind of guy you want to hang out with. But they never portray that on their show. They always give him these promos to read. The real Roman Reigns never shines through. It's the same with Seth Rollins. They have their own unique personalities, so don't write stuff for them. Just have them bring up that they have a title match, what it means to them, and just go out there and do it, and it would allow them to get over as a result. And I gotta say, I don't totally disagree with Chris Jericho. You know, Roman Reigns has had a bit of a comeback as a superstar in WWE. He's not getting the mixed reactions anymore, or not as much. He's getting much more of a positive reaction from the fans. But right now, if Roman Reigns were to leave WWE for AEW right now, I think Roman Reigns would get booed out of the building as soon as he came out, simply because they know him as a WWE guy. They know him as the face of WWE. Then it would be up to Roman Reigns and AEW's creative team to put him over and find ways to differentiate him from his character in WWE, kind of like the way they have done for Jon Moxley. Would Roman Reigns fare well in AEW? Of course. He's a top guy in the biggest sports entertainment professional wrestling company in the world. They'd be stupid not to put him in a main event position, not to put him in a prominent position in AEW. Okay? It'd be like, I mean, I don't want to go as far because they're not in the same level in-ring wise, but it'd be kind of in the same vein as WCW seriously mishandling a main event talent like Bret Hart back in '97. Again, Roman Reigns isn't that hot as a character. He isn't that good as a professional wrestler, but he is a main event star, kind of like Bret Hart was in WCW. So again, Roman Reigns would fare pretty damn well in AEW. That's just me. I agree with that with Chris Jericho. And remember, I mentioned a few news for AEW that might get them worried. And if you ask Cody, it doesn't. But, maybe I'm overreacting a little bit because again, it was a Thanksgiving episode. But NXT beat Dynamite in the viewership once again for a second week in a row. NXT gets the win over Dynamite. This time, NXT got a total of 810,000 viewers, which I believe is around the same range they got last week, whereas Dynamite got a shocking, startling 663,000 viewers on TNT. So, not good for Dynamite, not good for AEW, because they had that great entertainment Thanksgiving thank you celebration for Chris Jericho. They had a world title match between Chris Jericho and Scorpio Sky, and they had a Kenny Omega versus Pac rematch. So not the kind of viewership you want for that kind of show. Again, it was a Thanksgiving episode, so most people don't want to watch those, apparently. But again, Thanksgiving is on Thursday, not on Wednesday, so again, don't know how to react here. But I'm going to say exactly what I said last week when we talked about Raw's viewership going down. There's far more forms of entertainment. You've got Disney Plus, Apple Plus, Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime Video, HBO. I hear Watchmen is doing pretty damn well right now. So, wrestling and sports isn't always at the top of the priority list in terms of fan viewership. You gotta pick and choose. And in today's day and age, you got streaming, and rather than sit through 2 hours of wrestling plus commercials, maybe you just want to watch just the wrestling in the future. Save you half an hour, which you can watch in something else. And in the meantime, while it gets uploaded and it's available for streaming, you can watch a movie or a TV show or a reality series, something of that sort. That's just the world we live in. We just have to adapt to that. But again, congrats to NXT for getting that second win in a row. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. Well, first of all, what kind of show they put on tomorrow night on NXT and Dynamite, and then what kind of ratings, what kind of viewership we get as a result of that. So stay tuned. And finally, today is Tuesday. Tuesday nights mean Impact on Access TV. So I got two segments reserved for Impact Wrestling. Number one, former Impact Wrestling director David Sahadi returns to the company. He was going to return full time. He was released by Anthem Sports and Entertainment back in December of 2017, before the company started touring, as part of, under the leadership of Scott D'Amore and Don Callis. This was done as a cost-cutting measure by Anthem Sports. And Sahadi has quite a background in WWE, well, not WWE, not just WWE, sorry, but professional wrestling as a whole, because he spent time with WWE as creative director from 1992 to 2003. So, and then after that, he spent from 2003, I believe, to 2017 as a director for Impact Wrestling. So he had, first of all, with his return to Impact Wrestling, he had this to say. After a long hiatus, I decided to jump back into the game full time. Impact Wrestling is rising, and the best is yet to come. One thing I forgot to mention is that he also worked as a TV director for Major League Wrestling this year. So, again, not trying to cast shade on Major League Wrestling or anything or any of the other companies, but he has quite experience as a TV director. One thing that I just want to state is, hopefully, Sahadi can bring a brand new look to Impact Wrestling. We've gotten, I believe we've gotten a few crane shots with Impact Wrestling now, but I want the show to feel, if you ask me, if it were up to me, Impact Wrestling would feel more like a NXT, AEW, WWE produced show, instead of what they've been doing, which is looking more like, these are independent shows and independent cameras for a national TV deal. Again, that's just my view, that's just my opinion. Again, I'm a fan of storytelling, I'm a fan of characters, I'm also a fan of tight-knit production, which I'm guessing you would know because of these shows, but again, that's just me, I'm guessing how most mainstream fans look at their form of entertainment. Most people, most fans want to watch the hottest product out there, the biggest product out there. And safe to say, Impact Wrestling isn't quite sending that message right now with how they produce their show. And just because I mentioned casting shade, and Sahadi did throw this on Twitter, casting shade on AEW, and I'm just going to quote this. no opinion, nothing. He had this to say. And I quote, "In 2020, Impact Wrestling is going to give wrestling fans something they've long desired and something AEW promised but never delivered. Change." That's what Sahadi had to say. Do you agree with him? Do you disagree with him? Leave your thoughts, comments, and predictions on the comment section below. And speaking of predictions, we've got quite an Impact Wrestling geared up for tonight because we had that fun throwback Tuesday edition of Impact Wrestling last week on Access TV. That, safe to say, I didn't tune into. I didn't watch. I saw a few segments of the show online, and again, it was fun. It was innovative. It was kind of a combination of NWA Power with something WWE has done before. I forget the name, but they have done those kinds of segments before with current superstars. So again, nothing out of the ordinary, except this time it was an hour and a half show. But this week I am excited for, because we got this big, bad main event that people should be tuning into. It's going to be Brian Cage versus Eddie Edwards for the first time. 1-on-1. Brian Cage, he missed his opportunity to become number one contender 2 weeks ago. Now, let's see if he can get back to where he used to be, back to the machine and back to the world title hunt. But on the other side, you've got a guy who's been very loyal to Impact. He's about to be 6 years long with Impact Wrestling, and I'm sure many Impact Wrestling fans, myself included, thank him for that. But I really want to see Eddie Edwards versus Sami Callihan for the Impact World title in the very near future. I really want to see that. Not at the expense of Brian Cage. So, and, Impact Wrestling isn't a fan of 50-50 booking, so at the end of it all, these are both baby faces. There's got to be a winner here, and I'm going to put it all on the line. Eddie Edwards gets the win. I said it. Eddie Edwards gets the win. I don't think it's going to hurt Brian Cage. I just think that, hey, Brian Cage loses here. It slows him down a bit, but he'll eventually get back to that level. In the meantime, let's start planting the seeds for Eddie Edwards to be a number one contender that can pose a real threat to not only Sami Callihan, but the entire OVE stable. ODB returns to Impact Wrestling this Tuesday night, and if you've watched ODB ever since she made her debut at Impact Wrestling, I believe back in 06, back in 07 maybe, she's a hell of a character. She's always got that flask carrying it around with her. And, as a end of the year feud, as an end of the year rivalry for Taya Valkyrie's Knockouts Championship, I wouldn't mind. Taya Valkyrie versus ODB for the rest of the year. Then beginning in the new year, bring back Jordynne Grace and maybe hand her the title. Let her have a run with it. But for right now, ODB can bring some pretty damn entertaining segments with Taya Valkyrie. Those two characters aren't going to mesh pretty well. It's actually going to be the opposite. They're going to mesh pretty well because they are the opposite kind of characters. So can't wait to see that. The Rascals face off against Ace Austin and Reno Scum in a traditional 6-man tag team match where you got Trey, number one contender to the X Division champion, Ace Austin. So traditional 6-man tag, gotta give it to the heels, gotta give it to Ace Austin and Reno Scum right here, right now. The Triple X Division champion gets the win along with Reno Scum. One question every single Impact Wrestling fan should be asking themselves is, will RVD truly return this week to Impact Wrestling? He's been teasing it for quite a few weeks now, and his girlfriend, Katie Forbes, has been a part of the show. RVD seems to act like he's too good to be on Impact Wrestling. And again, I'm interested in watching this RVD on Impact. This heel RVD. I'm interested in that. So again, hopefully we do get to see him back. And again, December, January is right around the corner. Hard to Kill is right around the corner. I wouldn't mind seeing RVD, beat the hell out of Rhino at Hard to Kill. I wouldn't mind it. So hopefully RVD returns this week. It has Shade to throw. And finally, we get the fallout from Tessa Blanchard, the undeniable one, becoming #1 contender for the Impact World title. Of course, this happened 2 weeks ago. We had that fun Throwback Tuesday episode of Impact Wrestling last week. This week, we get back to that Blanchard versus Callahan rivalry we've been having since, I believe, May of this year, set to book end at Hard to Kill. Again, if you ask me, Blanchard ain't going to become Impact World Champion. I don't think she's going to re-sign with the company in February of 2020 when her contract comes up, as it was reported back when she debuted that she signed a 2-year contract. So it'd be pretty foolish of Impact management to place the title on Tessa Blanchard. With that said, it's not foolish to have her challenge for the Impact World title. It creates headlines. It brings eyes to the product. It catches fans' attentions. And for the most part, I agree with Impact fans. If it were any other company out there, it'd be a little bit more noteworthy on social media. But because it's Impact, and because Impact is still looked upon as TNA, they don't quite get the respect that they deserve. And kudos to Don Callis and Scott D'Amore. They've really turned the company around. I've always been a fan every single year, every single week. But ever since they left Spike, ever since Hulk Hogan left back in 2013, Impact Wrestling has focused more on characters. Impact Wrestling has focused more on wrestling, and it's really improving. So I just want to throw that out there. If you've been thinking about watching Impact Wrestling, just give it a shot. I'm sure you'll like it. I'm sure you'll love it. Because it's a really damn good show. And as far as Tessa Blanchard, we can just expect a confrontation with her and Callahan and OVE tonight, as they should. They should start building up this feud for Hard to Kill in Dallas, Texas. So with that said, well, you'll be tuning in to Impact Wrestling on Access TV tonight. Not only that, today's Tuesday, which means NWA Power. You can also catch that on the NWA's National Wrestling Alliance YouTube channel. So with that said, that's it for today's Wrestling Talk episode on December the 3rd, Tuesday. So if you like this video, hit the like button. If you dislike this video, hit the dislike button. That's it for me. See you tomorrow.